talk a little bit about Investree, as well as our plans to address one of the pressing issues the country faces, which is that of the MSME credit gap. So Investree, a quick introduction about ourselves, is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that is domiciled out from Indonesia. We have operations in Jakarta. We have also started 2 years ago in Thailand. And as you correctly mentioned, Richard, we're hoping to start in the Philippines. As of end of December 2020, we were the first licensed crowdfunding platform by the SEC of the Philippines. We've partnered with the Philinvest Group via FDEV to start our operations in the Philippines. So over the course of the next couple of minutes, allow me to talk a little bit about the credit gap in the Philippines, as well as our business model to try to address some of these issues that we face in the Philippines. So Philippines is ranked 142nd globally by the World Bank for the ease of getting credit. Now, why is this so? We believe that this phenomenon is very similar to that of what other SMEs face in the region. That is, most SMEs don't keep good records. A big bulk of them don't have the basic financial knowledge to open a bank account, what more to get a financing loan from banks. So we believe in the Philippines, there's close to 1 million SMEs, as you can see in the slide, that are considered unbankable. The banks themselves try to address this credit gap, but the banks face constraints. Like, for example, if you were to lend to an SME, or not, furthermore, a micro SME, you will have to provide a bigger credit capital gap, or as required by Basel, the Bank of International Settlements. So because of this, banks find it very costly to lend to SMEs. They know they need to have basic infrastructures like opening a branch, hiring credit people. It's very costly to lend to these small companies when you can already lend much larger sums to much more established, bigger company. As such, banks tend to stay away from this lending group because it's costly. Okay, so as a result, what banks do to try to meet this credit gap is to simply ask for collateral. And as we all know, most MSMEs lack collateral, right? This slide talks about the market space that Investree is trying to address, what we call the missing middle in the Philippines. If you looked at this pyramid chart, on the left-hand side, the blue column, the bank's top-tier clients are usually corporates that have revenues in excess of $2 million sales per annum. Now, we also have micro-financial institutions that service the micro SMEs. These tend to be the sari-sari stores that bring in revenues less than $60,000 per annum. So we're talking about sales of $5,000 equivalent a month. Investree is trying to make a dent in the medium and small company space. We believe this is the correct segment to target because we think there's close to maybe about 100,000 of such SMEs operating out from the Philippines. This space contributes about 30% of the country's GDP, as well as employing 64% of the country's workforce. They also contribute nearly a quarter of the country's exports. So by targeting this space, Investree and as well as some of the other companies operating in this space will hope to make the biggest impact to the country in terms of employment, in terms of exports, and hopefully to the country's GDP. The Bank Central Philippines, BSP for short, did a recent report called The Future of Banking, where they interviewed multiple SMEs and some of the issues that they face in the course of their business. Now, if we looked at the main obstacles that they face, besides competition, is that of access to capital, right? If you looked at the bottom part of the chart, we see this table below, you see in the banking system in the Philippines, right, as a percentage of loans, since 2018, 2019, when this survey was done, right, SMEs loans contributing to less than 10% of the overall loan portfolio, right? And we actually seen a negative trend by a margin of maybe less than 0.4%, right? And less than 21% of enterprises in the small and medium space actually get access to bank loans. Now, the top 3 concerns faced by SMEs include lack of working capital. This was cited at 64% of all the respondents. Okay, so it is a big issue for SMEs in Philippines, and we're hoping to make a dent on that. So what exactly does Investree do? This is our business model. Investree performs the role of a lending platform where we will matchmake borrowers and lenders, right? I use the word borrowers loosely. In the Philippines, the SEC requires us to use notes as opposed to loans, right? So for the purposes of our discussion here, the borrowers will be actually the issuers of notes. Investree will do the due diligence on the underlying issuers/borrowers. We will administer the note issuance process, and in certain circumstances, we'll arrange for credit mitigation facilities, such as escrow facilities, such as credit insurance, to protect the lenders/investors of these notes, right? So that everyone's interests are protected. So for that, we will actually charge a marketplace fee to both users of our platform. It's worthwhile noting that Investree is not constrained like banks. We are a pure marketplace. We do not fund the loans ourselves. We are only a facilitator for these note issuers. Lastly, we also generate our risk scoring model using traditional and non-traditional data. So when I mean traditional data, this is what banks and financial institutions typically gather data from. They include financial statements from the borrowers, access to the credit bureau reports, and in certain circumstances, anti-money laundering services, KYC, PEP checks with data providers like Thomson Reuters. What we do with our partners in Philinvest is we overlay non-traditional data on top of this. For example, if you are a supplier to the Philinvest group ecosystem, perhaps you sell cement to the group. What we do is we can verify with the supply chain management team, which provides us historical data of how this cement supplier has performed in the past. And based on this data, we're able to make an accurate assessment of how well this supplier has performed in the past. Has he been on time? Has he delivered on time? How much has his sales grown over the course of the last few years he's been supplying cement? And based on this, we're able to give them a certain percentage of his sales based on the purchase orders he's been awarded, based on the invoices he's been awarded. So based on this, we are able to make a financing offer to the supplier. That's how we're able to replicate or transfer the credit risk of a small company, a small vendor, to that of a larger group like the Philinvest. All right, so that is in essence our business model. So Richard, back to you. I think that's all I have to say about the credit gap as well as our business model.